Hello, everybody. It's Helen Hillix, intuitive counselor and licensed therapist, and your host for From My Heart to Yours. I'm so excited to be with you today, and I'm really, really honored to have Bill Protzmann, who is, how do you say even, he's bringing a mission into the world of using music as self-care. And he contacted me on LinkedIn. It took us a little bit to connect, but once we did, it was like a magical connection because our hearts are so aligned in supporting human consciousness and healing, especially through alternative methods. And music is very dear to my heart and to his. So I'll be telling you more about Bill in a moment, but I wanted to tie it in with the topics that generally are being spoken about here on From My Heart to Yours. And lately it's been about sacred sexuality. And I talked to Bill just a little bit before the show about how music can be used to integrate with sacred sexuality and to inspire sacred sexuality and become part of the healing of sacred sexuality. And it's very dear to my heart also because I had a very painful sexual past in the 60s during the sexual revolution, and I learned how to integrate sacredness and sexuality and spirituality and sexuality, and I believe the world needs it so badly. So that's my passion, and that is part of why I invited Bill on, but also being a mental health professional for 35 years, I love hearing about alternative methodologies. So I'm going to read just a tiny bit about Bill, and he can tell you later on how to contact him and where to go to his website and all that to get more detailed information. So Bill Protzmann is a man on a mission, as I said, to raise awareness of the power of music as self-care. He's a successful IT entrepreneur who holds magna cum laude degrees in piano performance and creative writing, and brings music to audiences in non-traditional ways. In 2011, he launched Music Care Inc., a for-purpose corporation that teaches practical ways music can be used for self-care. I love that, and I cannot wait to hear more about it. His work was recognized by the National Council for Behavioral Health with an Award of Excellence in 2014, which is the behavioral health equivalent of winning an Oscar. So I thought that was really cool. So welcome, Bill. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Good evening, Helen. How are you?
Awesome. I'm really, really excited to have you tell the audience about what you do. So let's just dive right in. And would you please explain how music can be used as self-care?
Wow. Okay. In 30 seconds or less.
Here no, it is. An hour.
I'll give you the short version and then we'll talk about the long one. So the short version is just listen.
Please elaborate.
Just listen. So human beings are like little resonators, and all of us are resonating all the time for all of the energy that's around us, including the energy of sound and rhythm. So when we're out there in the world, all the sounds that are coming into us are having an effect on us. And our brains are pretty good at filtering all of that, but every so often something comes in that we want to hear, like music. And we go, oh, I recognize that. You know, that's Billie Eilish, that's Lizzo, that's Rachmaninoff. And our brains that think then begin to interpret those sounds for us in ways that we like, right? We find they're pleasant. So whether or not we're actually paying attention, the sounds are happening. And the wonderful thing about music is that it does work on that part of the brain. Actually, to be specific, it works on the amygdala. When our ears hear stuff, the amygdala is the one that gets the signals first. And that does amazing things for us, all of which fall under the umbrella of it makes us feel stuff. That amygdala is in charge of priming our systems for whatever it is that we need to do. And it does that with emotion. So if you need to be ready to run away from the tiger, the amygdala is going to hear the roar of the tiger and prime you for flight, right? Fight, flight, or freeze, and prime you to flight and to get away and to do something useful like start the fire in the cave and make sure the family's inside. So these are valid emotional responses, right? This is what is going on when the amygdala fires up and tells us what to do. So the other things it likes to tell us in basic 3 categories are that one about fear, that's a good one. It likes to let us know to be angry when we need anger. And that's something really great if you're defending your family from the tiger. And it likes us to feel sad and it likes us to experience joy. Basically, four things. Now, some people say eight, some six. I don't know. It's easier for my mind to narrow it down. So, fear, anger, sadness, and joy. That's the amygdala's job. And it does that really well. And our bodies respond all the time to all the sounds around us. You hear something go bang when you're walking down the street, and you're going to jump a little bit. And that's your amygdala doing its job in response to the sound. So there's things we like, of course, and things we don't. And my mission, if it really was a specific one, is to help people feel more. We don't like to be angry. We don't like to be sad. And we don't, like to be scared. So we try to keep ourselves in places where we don't have to have those things come up. But some of those things are unavoidable. And if you have a practice that lets the feeling come up and flow without it having to result in some sort of action, that's a really good practice. And the amygdala, being the lizard brain that it is, it's very easy to train that little guy so that when you feel angry, you just feel angry. And that's, oh man, that really pissed me off. And then it's gone. Instead of stuffing it all down, which I was taught to do as a kid. Don't be too angry, Billy. Don't be too sad, Billy. And by the time I hit adulthood, I had this huge reservoir of unspent anger and sadness, that's just, I was dragging it around, slowing me down. So the goal of everything is to find those feelings and really connect with them with a practice that just lets them come and go. And that's a really good practice. To do that, you've got to be in the moment, and you've got to be non-judgmental, and in some ways non-binary, and just have to be allowing everything that the amygdala has for you to come in. And I find that music is a really, really good practice for that, because not only does it supply the stimulus, the sound or the rhythm, it also supplies the rest of it too. It slows you down and makes you stop, and you listen, and you're present in the moment. And that's a powerful practice. And oftentimes, like when I'm listening to music, the voices in my head stop chattering, which means that that meditative practice that some people get through meditation and some get other ways of quieting your inner dialogue or monologue, depending upon how many of them there are, music does that too. So it's got all these amazing effects. And while you're doing all of that, we have science that says that it's lowering your pain. It really does lower pain, and it speeds up healing if you need healing, and lowers stress. And, we know how music relaxes us, and there's science. So this little tiny thing, what I said, listen more, I really mean that, because the more that you connect with all of the stuff that's going on in that part of you that feels, the more powerful you can be. And the more you're open to things like empathy and kindness and potentially self-actualizing, right?
Let's take a pause here, because I know you could just speak for the entire hour, because
completely.
There's so much to talk about. But I want to break it up in chunks that the audience can really dig their teeth into. And I feel like this first chunk is about honoring the fact that we have feelings and we don't know what in the hell to do with them.
That's it.
We just don't know. And because we don't know, they are suppressed. And then that suppression causes us to be blocked, and that block keeps us away from life.
Exactly. Yes.
And when we are kept away from life, it just reinforces, I'm alone, I'm screwed, there's no hope for me, and I don't know what the pain is, but I'm always in pain. So I think of it, the reason I'm kind of making these connections, because I was thinking when you were talking about, if you let the music come, then you can, it's sort of like you can align with the energy of the music. And that music is, this was the thought I had, was that the music is the oneness. The music is neutrality. The music is spirituality. The music is just pure energy.
It is, yes.
It isn't good or bad or right or wrong. And it's like, to me, that is like the essence of emotional intelligence and consciousness, is the ability to get to a place where feelings are not right or wrong and beliefs are not right or wrong. They're just expressions of a certain vibration.
There it is. Yes.
And it prevents us from living in that state of constant reactivity.
It
because
does.
we can just align. I mean, it's funny, Bill, because when you were talking about, listening to music, brings us joy. Well, some music brings me joy, but rap, a lot of rap music. I mean, I remember when my daughter was a teenager, this was 15 years ago, but there was some guy popular at that time, a rapper, and he would talk about slinging a big bag of condoms on his back, so that he could go out and hump that big ass, I mean, it's just unbelievable. And it's like, I tried to be neutral and just say, what do you like about that? But it did definitely trigger something in me. I was not that neutral about that particular vibration.
Well, that's good to know, because then you have a music that fits with, whatever particular emotions come to you during rap. And let's say it's like anger and fear. And we'll be just really basic. It could be something else.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
definitely, things you don't like. So anger and fear. So now you have your anger and fear music, right? And whenever
Right.
you need to feel anger and fear, you know exactly what to spin.
Yeah. So, so would you comment on that a little bit about whether you feel, whether we're in alignment about that? I mean, you're nodding your head, so I'm assuming we are, but that music connects us to the oneness and connects us to that feeling that goes
Yes.
beyond our ego.
You said that very beautifully, and it really does. A lot of people use music in what Maslow calls deficiency. That's the areas where you're trying to intervene with things. You're trying to get out in front of anger, trying to get out in sadness. But when you get to growth, where you're moving towards transcendence and self-actualization and oneness and harmony and all of the ways that you feel when you're doing that, oh my gosh, music does support that so well, because there's music that simply will transport you out of wherever you are just by itself into a new place. I can think of several songs off the top of my head that do that. And oftentimes you'll hear music like that at a funeral that's a big deal, or at some other immense moment in history. Like when the Berlin Wall came down, they played Beethoven's Ninth Symphony there. And that's the kind of opportunity that you're looking for in music, to take you to oneness, to take you to God, to take you to conscious, whatever you call it, to give you that boost, I guess, way beyond. So when you connect with music like that, you know it because you feel it. So your amygdala is reminding you that, yeah, you're doing the right thing now. Bill, this is the music that you wanted for that moment of oneness.
And excuse me, as a counselor, some of the frustration of my life has been helping people to align with a certain emotional energy so that they can release it, and to get in touch with a certain emotion so that it can be released. And Music Care Inc., manifests that idea that you can get underneath that resistance.
Yes, I completely agree with this. Even for me, and I was taught not to have big emotions, but at the piano, I had to have them. So in my day-to-day walking around off the stage away from the piano kind of environment, I had no clue of what to do with these big emotions. But at the piano, my job was to offer them. And I couldn't offer what I couldn't feel. So even from a little kid, I began to understand the depth that was in this music, not like in an intellectual way, but in a way that it was so present to be in that music.
Visceral.
Yeah, it's like a completely somatic experience. You just feel it completely in your body. And it's not about wiggling your fingers. All that, you practiced that. That's the practice. When it comes out, you've got to be out of the way and not judge any of the emotions that come up for expression, because the music can surprise you, even if you've practiced it over and over, with some nuance or something you hadn't heard or felt before. And then the challenge is in the moment to make that feeling come out. And it's a fascinating process to be that channel, repeating music that everybody has played. People who improvise a lot tell me that it feels the same when they're improvising. They're just in the flow, or it just feels like oneness. And it's not just one person. And this is where the conversation is going to get interesting. If you're improvising with somebody else or with a band, everyone's in the flow. They've
Right.
all connected at that level of oneness.
Right. Their energy just attunes to it.
It just syncs up. It's like totally entrained, right?
I want to make that the segue right now to music and sacred sexuality, because as you were talking, I was thinking, Bill, you were saying the moving of the fingers is just practice. Yeah. And it reminded me of that, how whether you're doing oral sex or how fast you're thrusting, or all the rest of the things are just moving the fingers. That's just practice.
Yeah.
But it's the letting the music and letting the sexuality and letting the spirituality take you to another level that makes it sacred. Can you talk a little bit about how you see music fitting into sacred sexuality?
I've always seen sex as a sacred act. It's a very important thing. And I know there are religions, mostly pagan religions in the world, that believe that that's the ultimate expression of man, female, male, female, God unity. And I don't know if I'm completely into that belief system or not. It isn't, the question isn't that. Where my expertise comes in is in this area of unity at the heart chakra, for example, or unity in emotional unity. Syncing up spiritually. There's a way in on all of those things that are extra physical that music provides, as well as in sexy music, you've got a beat that makes you want to move. So the music even minds you physically when you bring it in to whatever physical act you're doing, whether that's sex or riding a bicycle or working out or whatever it is. Washing the dishes, music can inspire that too. So if you're ready for it, music is going to give you that physical boost. It's going to give you the mental boost because you will have practiced and your mind can be let go and be more open and intuitive rather than dogmatic and analytical. It will also give you the emotional boost. And who doesn't want to be closer to their lover emotionally? And lastly, it gives you this wonderful option for spiritual oneness. And all of that opens up through the same music, whatever that music is. Now, the trick, of course, is that sex is usually at least two people.
Which we're not going to get into. But.
Right. But everything we're about to talk will work for you by yourself too. But here's the thing. With two people, you'll get the opportunity for connection. And what you want is the deepest possible physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual connection. Let's face it, right? Who doesn't want that? Well, some people may not, but it's certainly better that way. And it's only sacred if you have all four of the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual working for you. So that's where we're going for sacred, right? And to do that, this is actually something I've found that's a lot of fun. And I've written a couple articles about this, and I've done this with my wife. It's possible for two people to actually like the same piece of music for the same reason. And I just want to say that up front because I get so much resistance about that. It's possible for two people to like the same piece of music for the same reason. Now, that's important because
I agree.
If we're going to go dancing and I like the two-step and you like tango, I'd better know how to tango if I want to have any kind of fun with you on the dance floor. And likewise, for you, better know how to two-step. Now, chances are, if you know how to tango, you've already learned how to two-step.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? There's this need for practice. It's true. But when it comes time, especially for doing something that's like highly improvisatory, like Argentine tango, you're going to want to depend on the leader to have a fairly decent repertoire of moves. And because it's his job to make you look good, or vice versa. And in the old days, it was two men dancing tango together. So whoever was leading had the responsibility of making their follower look good. That's what it's all about in tango. And that takes practice. So what I want to encourage you here is, like, on the physical side, don't be afraid of your practice, because when you have it, it will free you up to improvise, to go beyond that.
I want to comment on something.
Good point. Yes.
That you're saying, which is that the tango eliminates competition.
Oh, well said.
And it's so important in sacred sexuality to eliminate competition of all kinds. It's like, if she says to you, I would like it to be a little slower and a little more tender, that's like, in that moment, she's leading the tango, and in another moment, he might say, and I would like it now to be faster or more tender or whatever. And that if we can get our egos out of the way, like you do in tango, you have to get your ego out of the way if he's going to make you look good. And
yes.
It's not about, in bed, of course, it's not about making the person look good, but to feel wonderful and to feel connected. And I just love that, the way what you were said. I'd never heard that before, that the job of the leader in tango is to make their partner look good. And I just feel like that, if we could get that, if that's one thing we could get out of this talk about sacred sexuality, is to eliminate the idea that unless, to eliminate the idea that there's anything other than harmony that is the goal.
So the musical doorway to that is agreeing on the soundtrack. Now, this isn't going to work all the time. My wife and I have a soundtrack that's maybe got 80 songs in it, and they're all great, and we just put it on random whenever we're feeling in the mood. But we've agreed on them beforehand. There's nothing in the soundtrack, and remember that sound is there to open us up physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That's
Right.
why the sounds are there. But we've agreed on the fact that we all like those songs, all two of us, or sex. There's nothing in there that's going to trigger us or derail the beauty of what we're doing. Or, we've made that conscious choice beforehand. And fortunately, my wife and I enjoy a lot of the same kind of music. But remember, it's for a purpose. So we both like, we both like some rap, for example, but there's not a lot of rap in our sex playlist because it triggers other things that are not for us a part of sacred sexuality. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense. And that was one of the other things I wanted to comment on, is that I think people have to be really conscious about the energy that they're bringing into the sexual experience. Is that, you can bring in some really hot and heavy kind of rap music, but what's going to be the result is that there's going to be a violent energy involved in it, and sometimes maybe that could be exactly the right energy that the couple wants to get into that primitive, primal sexual experience, and that could be their gateway to the spiritual. It wouldn't be my gateway.
Yeah.
But one of the things I learned in this recent summit that I did of 27 sex experts was that people have different portals to spiritual sexuality. One of the women was talking about how, dominant, submissive sexuality can be an incredibly spiritual experience. Well, that just was out of my, what do you call that? Something wheel out of
out of your wheelhouse.
Wheelhouse. Thank you. I'm so bad about remembering those phrases. Yeah, that was out of my wheelhouse altogether. It's like, okay, but I like what you're saying. It's so much more about defining what the couple wants and feels is going to support their sacred sexuality, and not allowing something in that might trigger them into some other energy.
And the remember we talked about practice. So physical practice, that's a good thing, but now we're going to do something that's mental and emotional, and that's the agreement on the music. When you talk to somebody about the music that they love, and it has to be music that you love, that's the most powerful music, right? So when you talk to somebody about the music that they love, it's possible that some of their great music is something that you won't like at all.
Right.
And in the process of choosing music to sort of soundtrack sacred sex, you want to make sure that both of you have an equal like for the music in a way that goes to emotional as well as mental. Like, I don't like the words. Well, maybe it's better to have a song that has the same emotional components, but without the lyrics. And that opens up an interesting conversation, because the two of you then wind up hunting for new music together.
Right, and that becomes part of the foreplay.
It becomes part of foreplay. And then the cool thing about this, so get this, the music that we love and that we remember is always with us. And all we need to do to trigger the same feelings is remember that the music is in our heads. We don't have to hear it. We remember it, it comes back. It brings us the same emotional, physical, mental, spiritual content when we remember it. So you and your partner have gone on this hunt, and you found a new piece of music that does it for both of you in a way that you need. It's become part of your soundtrack for sacred sex. And guess what? Every time now that you remember or hear that song is a moment where you reconnect with your partner, regardless of whether they're in the room, right? So you're building this practice, right? Isn't that amazing?
It's so true. It is so true. I can remember so many times that I was listening to a particular opera aria when I was upset, and I remember it's still in my cells. I remember that expression of that emotion. And I love what you're saying, because it builds on itself. is really,
It
I
does.
believe what you're saying is, if you add a soundtrack to your sexual experience, then whenever you hear that song, it takes you to the sexual experience and the connection, which makes you feel close to your partner, which then is foreplay for the next time.
Exactly. It's like way back in the day, who was it? Marianne Williamson. Somebody wrote a book about how to make love all the time, and music is one way in on that. You don't have to feel everything that you'd feel at orgasm all the time, but you can keep that door open wherever you are in your day with a little music to remind you about it. And sometimes it surprises you in interesting ways. And what you said is so important about the memory, because I remember the first time I heard the album by the Three Tenors. I can tell you exactly where I was. I can tell you what time of day it was. I can tell you what I was smelling in the air, because it was near a bakery and they were baking, the cinnamon rolls for the day.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I was ready to get coffee and have a cinnamon roll, and to get a donut or something for my daughter, who was in the car because she'd been crying, and so we were driving around and it was time for, the coffee shop. So all of these memories are part of the Three Tenors album for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never going to change. And it's such a beautiful thing to welcome our built-in superpower that does that for us. And if you just sort of knock on that door a little bit, you'll find out that that superpower is alive and well inside you and just waiting for you to tap into it.
And how many people, Bill, love? I just went to a concert last weekend of a local group that's so awesome, but they played all kinds of late 60s music.
Oh, yeah.
Which was my youth.
Yeah.
That's when I was a late teen. And, and of course you're into music and dancing and, sex and all of it. And my God, that music lights me up still. It just makes me happy, because it rekindles my connection to the fun of youth. Not that I would ever want to go back there, by the way, but it's still, it still lives in me 50 something years later. I'm still connected to that music. And I think every generation is, aren't they?
Yes, definitely we are. I got all messed up because I discovered ragtime when I was 12 or something. And then that took me way back to the early 1900s. And I had to go back in my 20s and relearn who the Beatles were. And anyway, it was a catch-up thing.
Got sidetracked.
I totally got sidetracked. But it's true, because the music of our adolescence is pretty much, the popular music of our adolescence is our music. So the music you love is the late 60s. The music I love is all messed up. But the music of my kids, my next generation, is going to be like 80s, 90s music. And that's going to be their thing. And then today, it's whatever it is today, and that's fine. It's totally great, because that's the music that it sort of reminds us through our growing up years, all the unrequited love songs. But, people always ask me, and you'll be interested in this, Helen, but Bill, I love this song, but it's a breakup song. It's got bad memories for me. What do I do? Because I love this music. And that's on purpose. I mean, that's what our systems do, right? We remember the good, and there was bad too, but we like to tend to forget that. But hey, you guys, this is all about feeling all the feels. So if you can bring up the music from an unpleasant experience and then allow it somehow to transform, you can reclaim the music without the trigger. You really can.
I love that.
There's a practice called EMDR. You probably, as a therapist, you probably are familiar with EMDR. Yeah. But guess what musicians do all day long? We create bilateral stimulation between the left and right sides of our brain. And that's what EMDR does. And musicians have an advantage too, because like an EMDR patient, we're dealing with big emotion. And we have to be able to deal with big emotion in a way that isn't triggered. It's terrible to be triggered in the middle of a performance. Everything goes south.
Right.
But if you remember a song that triggers you, you're facing the same opportunity that musicians do all the time. So here's what you do. If you can see this on the video. Yeah. This little tapping on the shoulders creates a bilateral stimulation. Technical word that means your what is it called? Corpus callosum is heating up. It's talking.
And for those on the podcast before the YouTube, he's crossing his arms on his chest and alternately tapping on the shoulders with his crossed arms.
Yeah, just either way. You can do it like on the side of your head. Whatever is easy for you, slapping on your knees, whatever makes it easy. And science actually says, we don't know why this works yet. And I really love scientists when they're that honorable, because it's really interesting that just firing up your corpus callosum lets you do the crazy thing with music. When you're doing that bilateral stimulation, you can release the negative energy from emotions.
You can
You
tease
just
them apart.
they just come apart, and you're left with amazing memory, but without the trigger. So I've seen this work with post-traumatic stress veterans. I've done it myself. When I figured out that I was doing what I do at the piano, left, right, all the time, and I explained it to my therapist, her jaw dropped. And I said, this is EMDR, right? And she's like, yeah, that's what we're doing. So, and you can do this for yourself with music. Find that music that triggered you, start doing the bilateral stim, and just be with that. Just be with that. If you need help, find help from a therapist or guidance or whatever, do that. If that's something that's important to you, do that. But this works. So take it from a musician who's been doing it all his life. The very first song I ever learned was left, right, the 2 black keys from the bottom to the top of the keyboard. Honest to God, that happened. And now I know the science behind why I'm not crazier than I am. Because EMDR is reminding me all my life.
Yeah, I love that. I love the human spirit, Bill, that finds a way to heal itself.
Yes.
That,
yes.
Just naturally. I was talking to a new client last night in Northern California, and he was telling me that he lived in a very chaotic childhood, and he learned to meditate in nature as a very little child. He would go out and connect to the oneness through nature. And, he realized later in life that he'd learned to meditate. And it's like the same thing you're talking about, through music. You learn through music, okay, I can heal through this. The human spirit is absolutely amazing and resilient.
It's so true. And it's inside there, regardless of what you need it for. Sacred sex, probably the most amazing way for 2 people to connect, especially if there's music involved. And I should say that you don't always have to have your music player, because remember that memory?
Right.
When all of those wonderful parts of that memory that came back to me when I heard the music all the time, every time. If you and your partner don't have a music player available, you've practiced to music, and that music's inside you. And each one of you is going to hear that music in some way.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is say, play my sex track, and the brain will kick in and it'll start playing those songs, whatever order it chooses. So, it's even amazing that you don't have to hear it, right?
Yeah. I remember being in Notre Dame in like 1987, and the monks were chanting. And my then husband had a tremendous ear for music. And, 30 years later, he could hum that chant from Notre Dame. And that's not like a song on a record player, or that's just a little snippet of a chant that just stuck in his brain and, rekindled that amazing experience of being there.
Yeah.
This is a weird part. I can't remember that song at all, that chant at all, but I can still feel it in my body. Can you talk about that?
Sure. You know that thing, I forget what it stands for, but ASM, where your skin crawls? You get the chills, you feel prickles on the back of your neck, whatever. I think I'll have to look up what ASM means, but there's a whole genre of music right now, and some of it is video, where there's music and video together, that is intended to do nothing less than make your skin crawl. And not in a bad way, not in a terrified way, but in a pleasant way. And, it's not hard to find out that you can do this. You'll remember times in your life where it's like, oh yeah, I remember I was in this beautiful setting, or, I saw my wife coming down the aisle at our wedding, or just whatever. Think of the memory that brings it to you. You can practice this ASM thing, and there is music that definitely triggers it for each of us. And we're, 7 billion of us. There's different music for everyone. But if you want to feel that, play around with some of the ASM stuff that's out there on YouTube, and you'll get the sort of a practice of intentionally giving yourself a physical buzz. And once you start to realize that you can, it really goes deep. So that's the start of it.
I mean, it's interesting because I have that experience many times every day. I don't know, the more and more in tune I get with the chi of the universe during sessions, especially when there's energy moving, we've hit something, I will just get a rush of goosebumps rushing through my body over and over again during the
Yes.
session. So I totally get what you're saying. And for me, it has to do with feeling an alignment with the energy again of the universe, that I'm viscerally aware that it's flowing through me.
Yes, exactly. And building that skill, or unlocking that I won't even call it a skill, unlocking that ability that we have. We're born with this ability. It's so easy to do that with music. There are other ways in, of course. There's always other ways in, because this is non-binary. But my
Right.
expertise being in music, I know the music that's going to make my skin do this. And even just remembering it, I can remember and create it for myself. Wow, when you figure out that you can do that. So I'll flip what you said around the other way, which is when I feel my skin crawl, I know I'm in the flow.
Right.
So it takes it, my brain can't handle all of the quantum science that goes along with explaining what the law of attraction actually is and how it does. Although I'm fascinated by spooky action at a distance, what they call quantum entanglement. However, that said, if I can make my skin crawl,
let's not go there, because I can't follow.
no, I don't either. But if I make my skin flow, if I can make my skin crawl and prickle like that, I know I'm in the flow. And all of that other stuff is just science explaining what it is that I'm feeling right now. My feelings are like my guardrails. They tell me where I am.
Right.
Make sense?
I love that. I want you to say that again.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the feelings are the guardrails, and they help you stay in your lane. If you get too far to one side or another, you'll get a little nudge, and that nudge will feel like tense or stress or anxious. You'll feel that, and then you'll go, oh, I'm anxious about this, and you'll make an adjustment without even thinking about it. You'll make an adjustment. And this is like training the autonomic nervous system to take commands. It's not really the autonomic nervous system taking commands, the thing that beats our heart and breathes our lungs and all of that. It's not really that, but it feels like we're directing it, when in fact we're not, because what we're just doing is tapping into what the amygdala, the driver, is already telling us about what we feel. And we're just, instead of resisting it, we're going with it.
I want to plug into that, and I don't know how yet, but I know I'm generating some thought.
Yeah,
here.
I can see you thinking about it.
So our feelings are our guardrails, and they are it's sort of like they are saying, be aware that something's happening. That's how I would translate that as a coach, is notice that something's happening right here. And if we can use music and other methodology to keep that neutral and not go into our habitual coping mechanism, but just say, I notice something's happening here, and then follow it with, I wonder what. Let me inquire about that, and
there you go.
Okay, I notice that I'm being triggered. I'm feeling fear. Well, I've got my playlist right here for fear, or alternatively, I know how to chant, or, there are lots of ways to integrate music, aren't there?
There certainly are. Yeah.
Chanting is another way, of really powerful way of letting the sound just come through us, if you can let yourself be that self-expressed.
Exactly. I'm a terrible singer, but I've sung on stage in front of real paying audiences a few times, and it's an amazing
challenge. Be that terrible then.
Oh no, I'm terrible, guaranteed. But giving yourself permission to be that vulnerable,
yes,
is really important. I'm working on a talk right now where I'm going to sing without any instruments at all.
Right.
And I'm doing it not because I want to sing anything beautiful, but because I want to offer the audience the opportunity to get to that vulnerable place with me. You see, and
I've been in lots of workshops where we were encouraged to sound, and
yes.
I've led things where I've encouraged people, and people are reluctant as hell.
Oh yeah, we're not. America's pretty locked up on this stuff, guys.
Yeah.
There are cultures where it's not, and I'd be very uncomfortable in a culture like that initially, but I think I would learn. I think I would.
Of course, you
would.
Be
welcoming,
Of course you would, because your guardrails, would be alert, 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 and you would say, "Ooh, I wonder what's happening here. Let me get into the music." I want to make one more connection back to it seems like we are controlling the autonomic system when we aren't, because if you can be aware of when you're hitting the guardrails and you can be neutral about it, and then in this context connect to the music that will help you express it and release it, then you are calming your heartbeat, and you are calming your breathing, and you are reducing your blood pressure. So you can have an impact on that by paying attention to when you hit the guardrails.
Yep, and allowing. So we talked about those four emotions, and there are really great things that are calling to us right now in the world. Like, let's say the road that has the guardrails on either side is the road of kindness or the road of gratitude. You know how it feels to be kind, right? If you're listening to this, think about the last time you were kind. You know how that feels. And you know what it feels like to be grateful, to express gratitude. Say thank you. And lots of people say thank you and they don't mean it, and you can tell. But if somebody says thank you and they really mean it, you can also tell that. So you want to be the person who's able to say, yeah, I'm authentic. I really mean it. When I say thank you, that really means it. What does that feel like? Well, if you can connect your gratitude to a piece of music, the way that we've done with Sacred Sex,
right,
then you'll always have remember, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual component to your gratitude because it's connected to music.
You know what? I'm going to take that on. I do a gratitude list every single morning. That's the first thing I do when I open my eyes, is I always start out with gratitude. And there is a particular Ray Lynch song. I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah, I do.
But,
which one?
You know, Guitarro. I don't remember the name of it. It's from something about the knees and the shoulders. It's from that album, but it just does something to me. And I'm going to start playing that on Alexa every morning. I'm going to train her to play that for me while I'm doing my gratitude list. I'm so excited, Bill.
Isn't that cool?
Yes.
So if you were on your gratitude playlist or on your gratitude song or on doing gratitude and something comes up to knock you off the road, you're going to recognize what's going on because you're in your holistic place of gratitude.
Right.
So anything that comes up is going to be obvious. Well, I'm grateful except for that one time. Exactly, right? And aren't those amazing little things that remind us that we have work to do?
Yeah, a thought popped into my mind of, I have another new client who is hard of hearing. And how would you integrate that? Would he have to rely on memory in terms of integrating that? I think it would be easier in the individual guardrail thing and gratitude, but I'm wondering about how you would manage that in the sacred sexuality experience when he doesn't have his hearing aids in. And
that's a really great question. This is kind of a clumsy approach, but there are things that are bone conducting headphones, and they have the ear speakers, but they also have, they look like little metal discs and they rest on your skull. And that can help people who have a difficult time hearing to feel the music because it's transmitted through the bone. And I know of a percussionist, for example, that does symphonic percussion. She's completely deaf and she picks up everything through her feet. So her cues are all visual and what she feels in her feet.
See, I got goosebumps.
Yeah. So there are these abilities that we have. And I know from people who are losing their hearing that other senses sort of kick in, especially if you have total hearing loss. You become much more sensitive in other ways. So the bone conducting headphones can help. But something else that's really important is feeling vibration in your fingertips, or if you sing, in your head. And if you can feel vibration in some way, then you can experience the sound. If you have a really amazing stereo, just put your hands on top of the speaker. And that will supply some of the emotion that isn't available to you through your ears, right? Or a guy that I read about used to do sound baths. He's down in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he has a grand piano, and people lie down under the piano and he plays. And the vibrations are big enough that you pick it up in your body.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
I was at an EDM concert by a band called Owl City. They're popular and my kids like them. And I'm not a big fan, but electronic dance music in a concert setting is meant to shake your internal organs. And I knew it was going to be loud, so I brought ear protection. And then I just stood there. There were no seats. I stood there during this concert, feeling all of my organs jumping around inside. And when I went home, man, I was feeling good.
That is so bizarre. I
Isn't
never
that wild?
heard of that.
So there's lots of ways to experience sound that safely, please, because a lot of people had ear protection at that concert, but that's so loud that you want to make sure you're not going to damage your eardrums
Oh,
if you've
I
got any
know I
left.
damaged my ears in the late 60s standing next to huge
Yeah,
speakers,
but you
at
wanted the
concerts.
vibration, right? That I want the sounds and to jump around inside me. I want to feel that. And even at the piano, I can feel, and this is why acoustic pianos are so great, because you can feel in your fingertips what's happening in your ears. And you modulate this percussion instrument to make it actually sing by how it vibrates against your fingertips. So and that right there is Sacred Sexuality too. I remember the book by, is it Gay Hendricks, where he's talking about intentional touch. And that intentional touch is the same kind of touch that I bring to the piano, where I have to feel it responding to me as much as I respond to it. It's a two-way street. And the piano is an inanimate object, and yet it responds very well if you're able to allow it to play as well as playing it.
Which
And
is
doesn't
back to
this,
the oneness, isn't it?
it's the oneness, same oneness in Sacred Sexuality, I bet. I bet.
Yeah, in tune with that vibration of the universe.
Yeah.
And
Feeling it.
that's another aspect of it that I think we really said this already, but it's circling back around for me, is that one of the things that music does is it brings us to the oneness and out of that ego reactivity that says, I'm here by myself, I'm here in pain alone. It reminds us who we really are. That, just like you're saying about the piano, is that intercourse with the piano.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
what you're doing. You're having intercourse with the piano, and all of that exists in the oneness. It's all about, well, what I wanted to say too is sacred sexuality is really about learning how to find one another in the oneness, rather than just, oh, what makes you feel good? Oh, no, what makes you feel good? It's like, let's connect to the oneness and let that energy flow through us to one another.
Well said. I love that. That's just, well, if you're a client right now, if you're a client of Helen's or you want to be, she's got this, you guys. And I love the fact that integrating music, it's like it's this wonderful opportunity, this experiment that you can have being guided by Helen through this process is just so enlivened with music. And you're so fortunate to be working with her.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait to do a retreat with you, Bill.
Would that be fun?
Wait, it's going to be fun. It's going to happen. And I'm going to definitely use this, in my work, is, encouraging people. I always tell them, it's funny. I always tell them I have all these written tools, and every written tool always says, put on some sacred music. But I've never really dived into it about the process of choosing the music and the alignment of that music with all of it. Anyway, so I've been very supported by our conversation.
Yeah, I have been too. I love that you're dealing with one of the most basic needs that we all have. And it's right up there in the top 5. When they talk about the famous 5 Fs, here they are: fight, flight, and freeze. And I know that people know those, but the other ones are feed and mate. I'll use the polite word. Fight, flight, freeze, feed, or mate.
Yeah, you can say fuck on here.
Well, there you go.
I have explicit checked on my iTunes account because I cuss like a sailor.
Well,
not
there
today,
you go.
For some reason, but yeah, I like that.
So why not have them all be sacred? I mean,
exactly.
We can leverage that little amygdala and turn it into something that's beautiful and that does involve the rest of our brain. And actually, we're running to catch up with that little guy all the time.
Yeah. I want to, we're coming kind of to the end now, and I want to talk about why this is so unbelievably important. Is that our society is just out of control. People don't know what to do with their feelings. People are killing themselves, and they're killing each other, and they're raping each other, and and people are shut down sexually because of traumatic experiences. And it's like the pain of humanity right now is just beyond the meter that measures human pain. And, you know, people, I don't know, it's always been that way. Somebody I know was posting the other day on Facebook and said, you know, why can't we go back to the way it was in the 1920s? You know, things were simpler. And I said, that is such fucking bullshit. You know,
Yeah.
women just got the vote, you know, in 1920. It's like, it's just complete. We have this romantic idea that it used to be better back then. You know, women were getting killed by abortions in back rooms. And anyway, you know, and the poor young boys in the World War One, you know, being blown up. I mean, it's like there are no good old days. And it's still happening now. So it's like, I believe we're better off today than we ever were, because there are people like us who are saying, here are ways that you can heal. Here are ways that you can enjoy life. Here are ways that you can teach one another to connect to the sacredness of life. And music, oh my gosh, music is such a powerful way to connect to the sacredness of all of life.
I so agree. I don't mean this to sound critical, but I think we've followed our communal way of thinking about as far as it's going to take us. And this great experiment in
the collective ego way.
Yeah, the collective ego. Yeah, and everything that I read that's hopeful, even today, a piece in Wired UK of all things, acknowledged that there's a shift back toward the matriarchy, away from the patriarchy toward the matriarchy, and that's the sacred feminine, not just feminism, the sacred feminine, and all of the
men too.
And men too. And the trends are to embrace those feminine attributes of kindness and gentleness and respect and just all of these things that are not anywhere near the ego side, and they're not anywhere near greed. They're, instead of competition, they're collaboration.
Right.
And you know what? We're finding
I wouldn't say we're going back to that. There was never a time when the feminine was integrated into the world. There is no going back. It's like we're trying to catapult forward to a time when the female and feminine is integrated.
Yes, but sacred feminine, sacred masculine integrated together. And I look at things like the explosion of gender awareness and the trend toward authenticity and vulnerability. And thanks to things like post-traumatic stress, we now have post-traumatic growth. So the acknowledgement that we're moving, that this is meant to be a forward movement and not just fix the problem. And the cost is high. You've mentioned the cost. It's big. And it's sadly one that we have to pay in order to get from here to there. But not all of us are required to pay. We have an option. We can help change the world by making a one person at a time kind of change. And honestly, if you need help, find a therapist, find a guide, find a coach. There are so many of them out there right now. It indicates that this shift is already happening. And Helen, you're part of this that's helping to move. I'm part of this, and we're all doing our bit, to help the people who want something else.
And to, it is one person at a time, and yet at the same time, it's like it's got to be the collective that shifts.
Yes.
You and I are praying for reaching that critical mass. When the one person at a time gathers enough to make that shift real, because we can be in our own little offices or communities speaking and healing and everything, but if the collective doesn't shift away from competition and greed and using one another and all of that, and the patriarchy, dominance and all of it, where I don't care what we do in our offices, it ain't going to change anything. So.
Yes, it's true. I hope that if you're listening to this, find other people who are like you and create a bridge with them, whatever that might be. Maybe it's coffee or it's something that's real, not just a wave or a like on Facebook, but something that actually gets you into the same space, even if it's for 5 minutes. Do those things, because that's going to help.
Energized connection.
Yeah.
Connection between your hemispheres, connection between your body, mind, and spirit, and connection between each other. So I have loved our conversation, Bill. I really have. I've had such a good time. And I want you to tell people about what you're up to, what you're doing, where they can find you.
I have this wonderful sideline of helping the San Diego Symphony give away tickets to Veterans Military Guard and Reserve. And we've been so incredibly successful with this. It's never like on the boards as something that's real, but we just do this. And the feedback from those sorts of things, it's so incredible because people email me back and tell me about their response to the concert. And so the things that light me up are getting into those relationships with people so I can hear how music is working on them. If you are a veteran military guard reserve or friend or family or whatever, and 1 out of every 3 people in our little county of San Diego is in some way connected to the military, these
Wow.
honor tickets are for you. So find them on my website, musiccare.net, musiccare.net, and a bunch of other free stuff there. You can get to the online course from there. I do a couple of ways. I can work with you individually, of course, or if you want to actually take this into your process and make it a part of the thing you deliver to other people, or if you're just interested at that deep of a level, I mentor you through the same process that you could go through independently on your own. So there's 2 options for the deep dive if you want to do them. What other things are exciting? I'm looking forward to performing more. You know, I often speak with the piano on stage and I do 2 or 3 numbers, but I'd love to get back into my doing my one-man show again because it's so satisfying. I mean, it's totally selfish to want to do this, but I would love to be able to offer that again in the community the way that I was doing before I moved to Idlewild, actually, in California. And
That's
up there,
so
that's
interesting. Yeah. Because
everybody plays music up there. That's such a beautiful spot
right,
for musicians. Yeah,
right. My mentor, Beth Green, lived in Idlewild
yeah,
for a
exactly.
few years. Anyway, so look up musiccare.net and find Bill Protzmann. And if you know people who know people, spread the word and help get his wonderful work out there, guys. And are you on Facebook, Instagram,
Oh gosh, yeah, I'm
YouTube?
everywhere.
So tell them how to find you there.
Yeah, if you get to the Music Care site or any other place, really, you can Google me, Bill Protzmann, and you'll find all kinds of stuff. I'm splattered all over across YouTube and Vimeo and LinkedIn, of course, as you know, Helen. And there are so many incredible podcasters out there doing this work, and I've been very blessed to be on a number of shows. So you probably see the links there. It's going to be
Right.
hard anymore trying to figure out exactly where my homepage is. But if you can spell my name, you can go there too.
Right. And remember that it's Protzmann with 2 N's at the end.
Yes, that's important.
Protzmann. So Protzmann, just exactly like it sounds, except 2 N's on the end.
There you go.
So, Bill, it's been a real pleasure. I'm looking forward to an evolving and expanding relationship with you. And
Yes.
I am so grateful to you for being on the show today. Very spontaneous guest. And I just love our conversation. And I know our audience is going to love it too. So
Thank you so much, Helen. That brought tears to my eyes.
Oh, thank you.